Welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life of a military wife in this crazy world that we have come to realize we are living in. So there is a lot still going on in the world, and I'm going to break down a bit of that for you all today in regards to the situation still developing in Israel and Gaza, specifically in regards to the United States citizens that are being held and detained and are not permitted to leave Gaza. So, I'm your host, Sam Wolf, and you are listening to Life of a Military Wife. Okay, so at this point, part of me wishes that we could go back to a pre-October 7th world, in which, heck, a pre-9/11 world, where stuff like this didn't happen. But we don't. And I'm just going to assume that most of you guys are up to date with what's going on, or you heard my podcast last week. If you aren't aware, there's a massive hostage situation going down, and that's because Hamas, the duly elected government of Gaza by the citizens of Gaza to represent them, decided to, with the support of the citizen population, not everyone, but at least some of them, break into Israel and kill and kidnap people indiscriminately. And when I say indiscriminately, I mean indiscriminately. Kidnap, kill, just cause absolute mayhem. And I want to help understand, I want to help show this isn't a Jew-Muslim thing. This isn't a Christian-Arab thing. This isn't a West-East thing even. This is a terrorist organization versus everyone they deem their enemy thing. Anyone who was in Israel, it doesn't matter if they supported Palestine or, as we'll get into, had even helped people from Gaza as an aid worker get medical care. They didn't care. And anyway, so let's just dive into all of the craziness. Over 200 originally, the guesstimate is around 222 hostages were taken during the attack. This was determined to be largely women and children. We do know there was as young as a infant in there, a child under the age of 1. We know at least one child under the age of 1 was taken, and some men too, but it's not determinate. Now, I said children last week, and that was because largely that was what we were hearing. We're now getting more specific information about the hostages that were taken. This is the largest hostage situation for the United States in years, probably since the 70s. And this is the largest hostage situation for this large of an international community. Probably, I can't think of another one like this. This is pretty much unprecedented. So let's break down exactly how unprecedented this is. To be clear, 11 countries that I know of, and I researched this really hardcore. Israel obviously had people taken hostage, as well as Mexico, Brazil, Nepal, the United States, Italy, France, Germany, Thailand, UK, and the Philippines. Outside of Israel, it seems like most of the hostages came from Thailand and the United States. The United States, had 22. Thailand has 11 confirmed. They had 12 people killed. I did not realize this, but 30,000 Thai live and work in Israel. 5,000 of those live and work close to or on the Gaza border. And that's because they can have a better standard of living and make more money in Israel. And so this was a huge blow to the Thai, Nepal. There were people killed from lots of different countries. There was a music festival hit, and there were people from all over the world at that music festival. And so when Hamas broke in, they were targeting anyone they saw, anyone and everyone who moved. They didn't bother to check passports or find out if they were tourists or on a visa and working, or if they were Jews or Christians or atheists or what. They didn't care. They shot, killed, and kidnapped anyone they found. So the fact that there are individuals who are backing this, it just blows my mind, because some of the people who were killed or kidnapped at that music festival were pro-Palestine. They were pro-Palestinian freedom. One of the women, and we'll get into this a little bit more, like, anyway, there's just a lot. There's a lot to unpack. They have done this before, by the way. But they've never been this successful, ever. And that is what sent everyone reeling. Usually, when they do this, they get a soldier or one or two individuals. Back in 2014, they kidnapped 3 teenagers and eventually killed them. So, and as far as I was seeing, that was one of the larger kidnap hostage situations that they had managed. So the fact that they got several hundred, and that's the several hundred that they got and kept. They had more initially. One of these confirmed hostages is an Israeli female soldier. Her family is terrified for her right now. Okay, so the first set of hostages, there have been 2 sets of hostages as of right now who have been released. The first 2 sets of hostages released was a mother and daughter. The daughter was 17 years old. Initially, the reports I heard was like the daughter was 5 or something. And finally, I was able to get more specific information, but that was like in the very first hours before we even saw. They were saying they were going to release someone, and we didn't get a lot of clear information until we actually saw them. They were released, and we found out after they were released that 13 family members of theirs were killed and kidnapped at the same time. Many of those kidnapped are still being held, and so they're not speaking. They're not giving any information. They're terrified. They're terrified that they might say something, and because of that, their family members that are still being held hostage are going to be harmed. And in addition to that, the next 2 that were released were 2 80-year-old women. Now, this is what I was alluding to previously. But one of those 80-year-old women, she had been a aid worker, human rights aid worker, basically nonprofit. She'd worked for a nonprofit. And what she had done was she would drive to the border between Gaza and Israel, and she'd pick up people who are needing medical health care, and she would drive them and take them to the hospital, and then she would get them back to the border so that they could get home. She was helping people. She was helping Palestinians get improved health care in Israel, and they still took her. Now, she said that she was treated fairly well. They made sure she had her medication, and they did let her go. But the fact that they even took her hostage at all is just mind-blowing. Again, these people didn't care who they were taking. They didn't know who they were taking. There was no hit list. There was no master plan. It was just a general guideline. This group, go get people who fit this description. And that says a lot, because a lot of the people, and this is what I have been told by the different media outlets and resources I've found. So the kibbutz, as far as I am aware, kibbutz are the communal living neighborhoods. I might be wrong on this. I'm going to preface this, but I know that historically the kibbutz were basically communist settlements. These people are not like supermassive right wingers. These are people who tend to be more on the liberal side. They tend to be more pro Palestine and pro, those things. I'm not speaking for any of the people who lived in this region and attributing anything, but they tend to be a little bit more liberal. Tend to be. Like this woman, she was a human rights aid worker who would help Palestinians to get good health care. So these are people who tend to be or were more sympathetic to Palestinians in Gaza. And they are the ones that were attacked, killed, and kidnapped. You think they might want to be nicer to the people in Israel who were supporting them if they actually wanted support. They just wanted people gone. And that's my hot take right there. That's my hot take. So anyway, there has been a lot of stuff going down in regards to all of this. And one thing that came, I don't know why, but I just did not hear a lot about this in the initial aftermath. I knew about because my alma mater, I went to Brigham Young University, and they have the Jerusalem Center, which is a study abroad location in Jerusalem. And I applied to go there. So I'm very familiar with the facility, the amount of students and everything that it has, the curriculum and whatnot. And so immediately when this all went down, I was like, oh my goodness, there's Americans, there's families, there's kids, there's stuck in Israel who are going to need to get out. There's, non-combatants. And the Israeli government has done its best to try to get non-combatants, foreign non-combatants out of the country as much as possible. They have been allowing countries to come and pick up their people. And y'all know what a wonderful, and that's sarcastic, what a very, very just messed up job our State Department has made of that. And that's a whole nother can of worms. But I was concerned about the students, and anyway, found out they got out. The school had a plan. They were already planning a trip to Greece. They just went to Greece early. They closed down the center. They're all good. But in the process of researching all of this, I found out, oh wait, we've got Americans trapped in Gaza. Because what does our State Department do better than anything else? Abandon Americans. Because they're fabulous at it. So far, during this administration, the State Department has abandoned Americans in Afghanistan. They've abandoned Americans in Sudan. They've now abandoned Americans in Israel. They're kind of fixing that one a little bit. They've abandoned Americans in Gaza, and they've abandoned Americans in Lebanon. So at this point, travel at your own risk, because obviously our State Department couldn't care less about the safety of U.S. citizens. Now, part of the reason why I'm particularly concerned about the situation for the Americans in Gaza, the Americans in Gaza fit a rather diverse profile, and there aren't just Americans trapped in Gaza. Evidently, there are foreign nationals from several different countries there for lots of different reasons. Some of these are reporters, some of these are humanitarian aid workers, and some of these are dual citizens. But they are still Americans. For example, there is one situation I know of quite clearly. A mother who, she was born in Gaza, but she is an American citizen, has lived in the U.S. for quite a while. Her husband is a U.S. citizen. She had a baby, wanted her family to see the baby. She finally decided to go, and now she and her baby are trapped. And Hamas is not facilitating their ability to leave. In fact, they are deterring people from leaving. So we have U.S. citizens trapped. So this whole time I'd been mostly focusing on the hostages, but in all sincerity, there are somewhere near If the estimates are between 400 and 600 Americans being held hostage by Hamas. We don't know how many of the Americans trapped in Gaza want out of Gaza, but you got to imagine at least a few of them do. Specifically this mother, because she reached out to the news. She's reached out to the US embassy in both Egypt and Israel, and the US embassy said, "Yeah, we can't do anything for you. Try to head down to the border between Egypt and Gaza, and hopefully you, with the U.S. passport, you can get out." So I know some of them are attempting to do so, but the Rafah crossing has not been reliably open. They have been able to get some humanitarian aid into the country, into Gaza, via the crossing, but the Rafah crossing has not been a viable conduit for individuals seeking to leave. And Hamas is actively blocking the roads. They are actively stopping people from leaving. That includes foreign nationals, aid workers, and this mother and her baby. So when we talk about hostages in regards to the situation, we're talking about the hostages they took, but we're also talking about the foreign nationals. They are refusing to assist in leaving this area. So they know that there's no way that they could think that they would get away with the mass slaughter of citizens from over 11 different countries and kidnapping foreign nationals from those countries. And there was probably more than just the 11 I named who lost individuals or had people captured. So then the fact that they had the audacity to think, oh, we're going to walk in, slaughter people from all over the world for absolutely no reason, indiscriminately, just because they happened to be in Israel at the time, then take over 200 of them hostage, including little children all the way up to babies, and then refuse to let all the foreign nationals in our territory leave because we're going to use them as human shields, because that's exactly what they're doing. The fact that they don't want these foreign nationals to leave, they're hoping that that is a deterrent, that stops Israel, that the international community says, hey, wait, we don't want our citizens under fire too. You need to play nice and let them get away with this. And that's just wrong. That is completely wrong. And that is what they are doing. If they genuinely wanted to facilitate the evacuation of foreign nationals and their own innocent civilians, they could. But they are refusing to let them leave. And you can say some of them would want to stay. I'm sure there are individuals who wouldn't want to leave. But the foreign nationals, especially the few Americans who have read their stories, want to leave and are not being allowed to. So when we talk about 22 or now 20 American hostages, that's an understatement. We now have a far greater hostage situation. It's in the hundreds. And we still have Americans being denied the ability to leave Afghanistan. So I don't know what the State Department is thinking. I don't know what is going on, but evidently, travel at your own risk. That's what we've learned. Travel at your own risk. Because this government, the United States currently, in this iteration at least, doesn't care. If you travel anywhere, you're taking your life in your hands. Because if something goes wrong, Uncle Sam isn't coming for you. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who wouldn't want to. Governor DeSantis went and chartered an airplane and picked up 300 people on his own dime. He made sure Floridians got out of Israel. He's doing what he can. There are other people like my alma mater. They got their staff and students out of Israel. But don't expect Uncle Sam to do it. You might be lucky and have a nice governor. You might be lucky. You might have a organization that you work for that will help free you, get you out, watch your back. But Uncle Sam doesn't have your back anymore. And that's tragic. And there's so many organizations that would be willing to help with this situation. And I just don't know what they're thinking. I don't. It feels almost like they want it. They want to use Americans as pawns. And I know, I can't, that is just what it feels like. I'm not saying that is. There is no evidence saying that no one has said that from the State Department. There is just times where it doesn't feel like they care. They can write as many statements they want on the State Department website, which, by the way, I have been checking. But if they're not going to do something about it, it gets to a point where words just don't mean anything anymore. And your actions speak louder than words. So, Mr. Blinken, State Department, current administration, if you really care about American citizens, maybe you should start showing us that. Because it seems like you only care about freeing hostages that fit your narrative, your plans, that get you what you want. Inconvenient hostages are just ignored. Like the Americans still trapped in Afghanistan and the Americans trapped in Gaza. That's all I've got to say this week. Hopefully, we're going to get to a brighter place in this world. Hopefully, the world will stop imploding. But who knows? I don't know. I'm not in charge of that. But I do have some things that I'm working on, some projects I'm working on, some interviews with different individuals that hopefully will be able to bring a slightly happier note to some of these discussions that we have. But until then, please pray, do what you can. If you can, find a nonprofit that is helping in these situations that you respect and admire. Do what you can. Do what you can to support the nonprofits that are actually trying to make a difference, because at this point, I don't think our tax dollars are going to. And that's unfortunate. That's my very hot take on the whole situation right now. And as always, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military